One SEC game in the book, South Carolina, with a mixed bag of good and bad against North Carolina. Most important note, though, they got the win in Charlotte, 17-13, what was expected to be a high-scoring affair. Never really materialized. Rapid reaction time. Your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I think the game played out the way I thought it would. South Carolina, 1, comes out with the victory. 2, the game wasn't as clean as you thought it would be, which is indicative of it being the first game of the season. A lot of kids were cramping, getting hurt a little bit. But what I thought South Carolina did that was interesting to me is I felt like they tried to force Connor Mitch to be explosive tonight.
But it's a solid win. South Carolina, I don't think it's a team that's anywhere close to peaking in week 1. There are a lot of these senior-laden teams out there that pretty much what you get in week 1, 2, 3 is what you're going to get the entire season. I don't think that's South Carolina, but the early returns, at least, all things considered, I'd be happy if I was a South Carolina fan. You won the game. You didn't do that nearly enough last year.
TCU, you just talked about them. I think that they're in a position to fail this year. And it's not because they're not a good team, or Heather Dennis would call them a great team.
Great.
But their expectations are so lofty right now. We talk about Auburn in the SEC. TCU, I think a lot of people are simply thinking about what happened last year in terms of how good they were and how they were slided in a lot of people's minds in terms of the college football playoff. But if they end up losing or end up getting tripped up during the season, they will be considered a bust and an overachieving team or underachieving team, because of the lofty expectations that were set before the season even started.
You say TCU is being set up to fail.
I think they're being set up to fail.
They're being set up to fail by media picking them and buying in, right?
Exactly.
Which leads me to my next point. I'm dumping TCU as my Big 12 winner, and I'm hitching my wagon to Oklahoma. I'm going to ride with you.
We don't have any more room on this bandwagon.
You haven't played a game yet.
Boomer Sooner. Some of us have already picked Oklahoma. That time has expired. You're in the dead time of recruiting. You can't do that.
Let me ask you something.
Can't do that.
How do you think we'll do against Akron Saturday? How do you think we'll do? I'm going to take Oklahoma. The more I look at TCU, losing like your first, second, fourth, eighth, ninth, and 10th tacklers, a lot of turnovers last year. There were plus 18 turnover margin, and there's this kind of revisionist history with teams like TCU, teams like Ohio State. If you finished the season strong, if you finished the season blowing someone out in a major bowl game, people just kind of get amnesia and they think you dominated your way through your entire schedule. And there were multiple close games with these teams last year. You never return the same team. Even if you were to return all 22 starters, you would not return the same team.
Right.
Because a team is much more than just players on a piece of paper. So out with TCU. Write it down. In with Oklahoma.
I think they're primed to make a run to Atlanta. I think they're primed to get into the 4-team college football playoff. And everybody talked about Georgia's window to win a national championship. When this college football playoff was implemented, that window expanded, and I don't see it closing for the long term. I don't know what that was, bro.
Good job, though. I mean, a light bulb blew right above this guy's head, and he never missed a beat. And I don't know why, because you stutter in normal conditions all the time. So how do you have a light bulb blow above you? That's mental toughness. That's what that is. What if I were to tell you there's a legitimate possibility that it's Auburn's offense that fails to meet your expectations, lofty expectations this year? But running the ball is what I attribute to dominance under Gus Malzahn. And when I watched them in 2013, when I watched them when they were at their best last year, it was with power. It wasn't with trickery, contrary to popular belief. It wasn't throwing the ball X amount of times a game. That was nice, and that was a compliment, but it was always a compliment to the run game. And you had power that you could count on at fullback. And you had power you could count on at H-back. Tight ends could block. They could also receive. Auburn, at any given time, could go with one of those power 2 or 3 tight end sets to a 4-wide set and not even have to change personnel on the field. And you listen to Gus Malzahn himself talk, and he says, we got to start freshmen at those tight end positions. We are very unproven at that fullback spot. No one pays attention, though. They see the quarterback, check. They see the stable of running backs, and they assume, check. Got a superstar wide receiver, got more guys ready to flourish under him, check. And I understand it's a nice vehicle. Unless you have the engine under the hood that you did in the past, you're not going to win the way you did in the past. So the question becomes, can Auburn win a different way than they have in the past? And that's the question to me that remains to be seen. Could be yes. We'll see, though.
I think North Carolina is going to be much improved on that side of the ball, but I think South Carolina is more improved on that side of the ball in a greater manner. So I think the Gamecocks will run the football. I think they'll have success doing that. Don't let Steve Spurrier fool you. He will run the ball. He upset Florida in 2005 by throwing only 17 passes with the Gamecocks. So he'll run it when he has to. That'll be how the Gamecocks win the game. I have them beating them by a score of 38-24.
I like that environment. It looks like you're playing laser tag. Looks fun over there. I wish we had that fan you have behind you in our studio, by the way. We got two more big ones on Saturday. First up in Atlanta, the Auburn Tigers get our first look at that defense under Will Muschamp. They go up against Bobby Petrino in Louisville. How does this one play out in your mind?
Gus Malzahn versus Todd Grantham is also kind of an intriguing matchup. Louisville's got some really good players on the defensive front. I think it's going to be a closer game than people anticipate. I think Louisville will give them fits. At the end of the day, though, I have to stick with Auburn. They're my SEC champion pick. I think that they're going to win by a touchdown, 35-28. I do think it'll be a very competitive matchup, though, and I would look for Louisville to make some noise in the ACC this year and sort of build some momentum off of playing a very good game in the Georgia Dome.
I hear people giving Louisville a chance. I don't hear very many people giving Wisconsin a chance. They're only a 10.5-point dog to Alabama out in Arlington. That's the ABC primetime game Saturday night. How do you see that one going?
Well, I think Wisconsin's got a great program. I think that they're going to do what they do, and they're going to be just fine this year. The problem is what they do plays right into the hands of Alabama. Alabama has the best front seven in college football. Don't be mistaken by the secondary. Don't sit there and think because they weren't all that great last year that they're not going to be special this year. I think Wisconsin's going to have trouble moving the ball. I think Alabama will to a certain extent. I think the offense will kind of clink and clunk. I have Alabama winning the game 31-3 by 4 touchdowns against the Badgers and really sort of making a statement with that defense. I don't see Wisconsin, even though I really like Corey Clement, their running back, I don't see Wisconsin having too many yards or putting too many points on the board on Saturday night.
Since we spoke to you, and let's just let that text message rest there, just let it simmer for a second. You don't want to be the guy that answers too quick anyway. If you answer too quick, it makes you look like you have no life, and we all know that's not true about you. But since we last spoke to you, we've had 2 fairly surprising quarterback announcements, at least to most fans. You've got Grayson Lambert set to get the start for Georgia against Louisiana Monroe Saturday, and now today you have Treon Harris announced by Jim McElwain as the Game 1 starter down in Gainesville. Did these A, take you by surprise, and B, what are your thoughts?
Well, the Harris announcement surprised me a little bit simply because I sort of bought into the narrative that he doesn't fit the system that Jim McElwain wants to run. But, I think Harris is a better quarterback than Will Grier. I think he was better than Jeff Driscoll last year. Georgia, to me, is more an indictment of Bryce Ramsey than maybe Grayson Lambert being that much better. I think Lambert got a raw deal at Virginia. I think he was the most talented quarterback on the roster, was just maybe misused or didn't jive with what they wanted to do on offense. So I think Georgia will be fine. But Bryce Ramsey is kind of an example of, the quarterback that only plays quarterback, that's sort of a camp hero that gets a lot of offers early, that doesn't develop quite as quickly as we think. I think we've seen the same thing with Will Grier, who played against garbage competition in high school. Those 2 quarterbacks were very highly rated by yours truly and all of us in the recruiting industry. And so far, it just hasn't worked out.
What Steve Perry was to Journey, and what a band it was with him, he is to 247sports.com. JC Shurburtt, you can check out all of his work, does a great job, just released all of his game predictions today. We just kind of rehashed a few of them there. 247sports.com is where you can find all that. JC, take care, enjoy your week 1. We'll see you next Wednesday.
Thanks, Josh.